Hey folks, and welcome to this video. In this video we are going to have a look at the Pipnotic supply and demand software. We're not going to discuss installation. If you have not yet installed the software, please revert back to the installation video, which is the top of the Welcome to Pipnotic page. But just now we're going to talk about the software itself, how it's used, how it's interpreted. Before we do anything else, I just want to show you how you can configure the chart itself. So what you need to do is you need to simply right click anywhere on the chart. So I'm going to do that, and here you can go down to the bottom and click on the properties option. And here you can see all of the options and the properties for the chart that that the Pipnotic software is going to run on. And these are the colors that I use. You can see just here. And then there's also a tab here called Common. And Common has a few check boxes that we have to be mindful of. The most important is the chart on foreground. This must be unchecked. If this is not unchecked, then you will not see the distribution and accumulation candles. Okay, but this is the configuration. The configuration I like. I like to have the chart shift and chart auto scroll checked. I also like to see candlesticks, and I like to remove the grid because it kind of clears it up just a little bit. Okay, so that's what my chart looks like. But if we right click and have a look at the configuration of the supply and demand software, there are quite a few options. Okay, so here at the top we have the keys. So here we have the product key, which changes every month. So if you're sitting in front of your computer, it's the first of the month, and you realize that the software is not working, it could be one of two things. It could be that we're in a new month and the key has changed and you need to enter the key here, or it could be that your private key is missing. Okay, so if any of these are missing, or if the private key is inaccurate, please fix this and you should be in good shape. Then we have the dashboard. The dashboard here is set to true, and this simply presents this piece of data here. And what this is doing here is telling us a little bit about the range and the swaps for this particular pair, which is the pound American dollar. So here we have the monthly range. This is the average. This is the number to the left. Then we have a forward slash. Then we have the current range. We have the same for the weekly and for the daily. So this is the average daily range. And you can see here that last week, the week just passed, that we actually exceeded the average daily range by 8 pips. Then we have another section which is SL. The SL stands for swap long. And if you are holding a position short, you are going to have to pay £3.44 to hold the position per standard lot per day. Swap long. And if you're buying, and if you're selling, you're also going to have to pay £2.50. Okay, so there's the interest rate differential between the British pound and the American dollar is not really beneficial for either buying or selling. If it's negative, it means that you're going to have to pay. If it's positive, it means that you are going to get paid by your broker. Okay, and also color code this. If this is green, it means that you want to buy. If it's red, that you want to sell. Not that you want to do this, just if you want to trade in line with the interest rate swaps, then you can buy on a green dashboard and sell on a red dashboard. You can also disable this if you don't want to see this information. You can simply set this to false, and you can also decide where it's going to be. Currently it's up here. If you want to move it down to the bottom left, you can do this, and it'll disappear and go down here, but you can move that wherever you want. Okay, then we have the psychological levels. If this is set to true, it's going to draw lines where we have round numbers. So on the big time frames, it's going to be multiples of 100 pips, and if you go down to the very tiny time frames, like the 1 minute, there'll be multiples of about 10 pips. And if you go to around the 4-hour chart, there'll be multiples of 50 pips, and on the 1-hour chart, multiples of 20 pips. And so if you enable this, it just enables you to see roughly where these lines are. So if I just set this to true, and I just go like that, you'll see that it'll draw these lines for me nicely. Okay, so here we have round numbers, multiples of 50 pips, and this is just nice to know, because if you have a nice area of supply and demand that lines up nicely, like this one does here, this is another reason that we're going to potentially see some people get involved at that price point, because psychological numbers matter in trading. Good, and you can see here a psychological level count. This is how many levels above price and below price we want to see. And this also tells us the thickness of the line and also the style. If you want this to be a solid line or a dash dot dash, you can simply modify that here. Then we have supply and demand, and this tells us how these rectangles are identified and what rules we need in order to do that. Okay, so in default this is enabled, psychological levels is disabled. And then we have something called the risk reward ratio. So this tells us something about how far price moves away relative to the size of the area. So we have this little area here. This is a pretty small area, so we want price to move away at least 2.0 times the size of this within, which brings us to the next setting, 3 periods. So after after this pin bar here has closed, we want price to have moved 2 times the size of this area of demand away from the top of the box. Okay, and this is, I mean, you can, these settings vary an awful lot, but I like to leave them on 2.0 and 3. This is a generic, really nice setting that I like. You can also put this to 3.0, but the truth is there isn't a magic combination. But the combination that is set in the default is the one that I use most often. We have greater period multipliers, so currently we are looking at supply and demand on the current chart, but let's assume that I like to trade on the 4-hour chart, but I'd also like to see daily and weekly levels on the 4-hour chart. Well, then I'd simply put commas next to this, so I'd have 0, so it's telling us that we have 0 is essentially the currently active chart, comma 1 is a currently active chart plus 1, and then comma 2 is a currently active chart plus 2. Okay, so we are actually going to see 3 different time frames here. So if I press OK, you'll notice that we'll see some red boxes here. Those are the daily, and we have an orange box up here, which is the weeklies. Here we have weekly supply, and we can see this weekly supply without having to leave the 4-hour chart, which I think is beautiful. There's another really sweet little hack that we have available, and that is that you can also put negative numbers. So let's assume that, well, I like to see 4-hour areas, but I'd like to see the micro areas as well that are nested within. So then you can put -1. So we want to go to a time frame -1. Okay, so if you go like that and you hit OK, then you're going to see all these micro areas that have been qualified. And so here we have a continuation pattern. This is an hourly continuation pattern. Here we have a couple of nested areas just up here. Okay, so you can see you get some incredible detail, and if you zoom in, you'll realize that these areas are phenomenal. So we have this one here. This is a 1-hour continuation pattern, and this is exactly where price came to on the retest before it departed. Okay, good. So I'll put that back to 0. Then we have supply and demand. Line width, this simply specifies how thick these boxes are. Manual bar count. I mean, currently the software is looking at how many bars there are on the chart, and it's doing an analysis on all of those bars. But let's say that you want it to go back very far, then you can say, okay, well, I want it to go back 2,000 bars actually. So you can put 2,000 here, and it's going to go back 2,000 bars and start to find areas historically to the left. But I just normally leave it on default. If I want this information, if I want to see more bars on the chart, then what I'll normally do is I'll normally just zoom out like so, and this simply forces the software to start to look further back, because it's essentially using more data, because there are more bars on the chart now than there are now. Okay, good. Moving on. Show consumed supply and demand. If I want to see where historical supply and demand was located but is no longer, which has been consumed, then I can set this to true, and I can go like this. So the software is showing me, okay, to jump to a time frame where this is working. So we can see we had an area of supply here, and now it's gone. It was tested once, twice, and this area of demand removed it. We had this one here, which was tested by this little pin bar, but now it's gone. We have this one here, which was tested by this, but this removed it, so it's been removed. And we have this one, which was tested. this moved down, removed it, and so on and so forth. So this enables you to see where we had historical areas and which areas of supply and demand remove them. So I'll set that to false. Good. And then we have trend lines now. This is the trend line section, and here we have enable manual trend line management, and this is set to true. Okay, and so this simply tells us that if I manually draw a trend line on my charts, like so, connect this low to this low, the software will grab it and it'll color code it. So I know that if I'm on the 4-hour chart and I can see that, I can see, oh, this is actually a white line, which means it was qualified or rather drawn manually on the 1-hour chart. Okay, trend lines, we have enable extension. That simply tells the software to draw the trend line as a ray, so extend the trend line beyond the second point. We have enable auto trend lines. If this is set to true, the software will draw trend lines for you. So if I remove this, you can see that it said, yeah, that's nice, that's nice. And so we can see here that it's qualified this low and this low as being valid trend lines, and this one actually lines up quite nicely with this area of 4-hour demand. Okay, and this is relative to the time frame that you're looking at. So if you go to the daily chart, you can see that we have a trend line that looks like this. If we go to the hourly chart, we don't have any trend lines there. On the half-an-hour chart, we have trend lines that look like this. So here we have a low, a higher low. Okay, we have a trend line break, and then we have a downward sloping trend line. So it just enables us to see what's going on with the trend lines on the chart that the software is qualifying for us, and it helps remove some of the subjectivity as well. Okay, so I'm going to turn that to false, and here we have swing point significance. This simply tells the software how important these trend line swing points are. The higher the number, the more significant. So if I set this to, let's say, 20, which is a pretty big number, it's going to find the more profound swing. So like this one here and this one here. So this is a more profound trend line, as you can see. If you go to the daily chart, it says, yeah, here we have some really interesting trend lines. We have a high here and we have a lower high here, and this is held for a pretty significant amount of time. So what will price do once it comes back up to maybe support becomes resistance at roughly where this trend line would meet that point, that price point. So pretty cool functionality. Okay, so and here you can specify the thickness of the line and the style of the line, and here we have rectangles. So enable rectangle management, and this is an important tool because this enables us to, let's say we like this one here, so I'm going to draw that on there. I refresh that and it tells me roughly where my stop level is going to be. This is going to be my entry level. Here we have the size of the rectangle, and this is the position size based on my risk parameters, and the risk parameters are also specified in here. Okay, so we're enabling this. We don't want to fill the rectangle, so we don't want this to be filled like a solid color, but we want the rectangle width to be 2, which is 1 bigger than the automated trend lines, and we want the risk to be 0.25%. If I put this to 1, the software is going to look at my account size, it's going to look at the stop size, and it's going to say, based on the money in your account, risking 1%, this position could be 5 microlots if the stop size is 136 pips. Okay, so there's no guessing there, and it's just quite a nice feature that I use a lot. Here we have the accumulation and distribution. So if you want to see these candles, these are the white ones, you simply set this to true. If you want to see the price imbalance candles, you can set this to true. This is just showing us where we had these really strong pushes away from an area. And this is simply the width of the candle. And then we have the order section. And I don't use this much anymore, but I used to when Forex Live would post Forex orders on their blog. Then I would copy them and I would paste them here. So if we had some offers, I would paste the offers here. I'd paste the bids here. I would tell the software how the price points are split up. And here we have a space, which is what they used to use historically. and I press OK, and I go to that chart, and it would show me the price points on the chart. And so I knew that there would be pending orders, institutional pending orders located at those areas. So if you want to use that, you certainly can. Okay, good. Here we have the colors. So we have the dashboard color, it's white. We have the supply and demand. This is the default color, which is kind of a pink, or a violet rather. We have the monthly, violet, weekly, orange, and these are the ones, and we have the rest of the ones that we all know and remember. And so, I mean, I don't even think about it anymore. If I'm on the 4-hour chart, I know it's going to be blue. I know this one's going to be white. The weekly is orange, and the monthly is purple. And so I just know automatically now. And the reason I color code them is because it's just nice to be able to see that there is actually a difference in these different rectangles. And it's just nice to be able to see them, especially when you're doing something like this, where we are actually looking to put greater period supply and demand on the same chart. So I can be on this 30-minute chart, but I can see, ooh, we have 4-hour demand just here, and we also have a nice 1-hour demand just down here that has already been tested. Okay, so it's just a really beautiful way to be able to see the difference between these areas of price, supply and demand on a given chart. But that's pretty much it. It's pretty simple. But what I normally like to do is I like to use this mostly on the 4-hour time frame and up. So identify what's going on the bigger time frames, and I'll take that information with me onto the smaller time frames. And you've seen this via some of the analysis that I've done before, where I'll normally start on the weekly or the monthly, and I will gain some kind of a bias based on the flows that I can see here, so the distribution of liquidity on this time frame, and I'll take this bias with me down to the smaller time frame. So you can see here that we are actually dipping. We had a low, we had a deeper low, we probably have some currency strength divergence at this level. We had very big rejection, and that means that we had an increase in bullish liquidity for the pound American dollar at this price point. So that gives us like a bullish short-term stance. So I know that when I'm on the hourly chart or the 50-minute chart, that I want to be buying short to medium term. Good. Well, I'm not going to spend more time on that. If you have any questions about the Pipnotic supply and demand software, please post it in the video as a comment, or post them in the Discord channel, and I'll get to it as quick as I can. And if there's something that you're wondering about and you send me a message and I'm not there, please post that in the public forum or one of the public channels on the Discord channel, because sometimes I'm sleeping and there's always somebody awake, because we have people from all over the world. So if you post your question in there, you'll likely get an answer very, very quickly. Thanks for watching.